Yes, what's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron, and the Tailteann Cup semi-finals are throwing in this weekend. Two big games to discuss. Cavan against Sligo, Westmeath against Offaly. Here, as always, to break them down on this weekend's preview show. It is just myself this week, so you will just have to put up with yours truly. But we will be breaking down both games. Two massive games, of course, at stake. A chance... Well, obviously, both games happening at Croke Park, but a chance to get to the final, which will be in Croke Park as well. So, huge opportunity, certainly, for these four counties, all playing, both games playing in Croke Park this weekend. And certainly, some big talking points for the likes of both Cavan and Sligo. Cavan, obviously, a team that I think many people really would have expected. Or I think when a lot of people look at this Cavan team, I think we all very much feel that they probably should be in the qualifiers or should have been in the qualifiers and shouldn't have been in the Tailteann Cup, given the quality that they've had. But obviously, a couple of relegations back-to-back has found themselves in this situation. Sligo, on the other hand side of things, a real up-and-coming team in many ways. A lot of young players, a lot of success at underage level in the last couple of seasons. And they're certainly a county that is very much on the rise under Tony McEntee. On the other hand side, you've got Westmeath, who, again, another team, in my opinion, that I would see them as a Division 2 level side. But a disappointing relegation last season, followed on with a disappointing league campaign in many respects, is the whole reason why they find themselves here. And in a similar breath to Sligo, Offaly is another team that's had a lot of underage success in the last couple of seasons, that has been improving, bringing through younger lads. And they've actually got a very settled squad, and certainly a team that, in my opinion, could cause Westmeath a lot of problems this weekend. And if some of you lads remember my Tailteann Cup predictions, I did tip Offaly as a dark horse, and I do really feel that they could cause a couple of shocks this weekend to a lot of people in that Westmeath game. We are going to be going through the All-Stars as well, early All-Stars from the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. My pick of All-Stars so far from the 2022 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. So we'll be doing that after the preview of the two games. So we're going to be picking the best 15 players from the championship so far this year. And my word, it was quite a tough pick, to be honest, because there's been a lot of good players this year. And I think the toughest part about it all, as well, is, obviously, it's hard to pick the All-Stars right now because, for example, Kerry have only played 2 games against, low-level Division 2 sides, compared with, maybe an Armagh, Derry, who have to play Division 1 teams only. So definitely a lot to discuss, and plenty of comments coming in here. Edit says, hi. Sir Klopp says, I'm finally here on time. Happy days, my man. I'm usually a few minutes late anyway. I usually kind of wait just a few minutes so people can sort of jump into the stream and all the rest. But sure, look, we'll crack on with the preview. Westmeath and Offaly is the first game we're going to discuss here, and very intrigued. Both rivals, two neighbours, Westmeath and Offaly, two counties that very well know each other, and certainly will be like to, or certainly will want to come out on with a bit of bragging rights. Make no mistake about it. It is two teams that would feel better than the Tailteann Cup in some respects. I think they'll want to kick on and sort of solidify themselves as a Division 2 team in the next couple of seasons, and realistically won't want to be in this competition. But they found themselves in here. Offaly relegate from Division 2 this year. Westmeath obviously couldn't get promoted as well. So you would expect these two sides to actually be up there battling for promotion from Division 3 next season. In terms of Offaly, just running through some of their results en route to the Tailteann Cup semi-final. So a 3-11 to 2-13 win over Wexford. They then dug out an 18 points to 10 victory over Wicklow, and then a 3-17 to 11 point, very comprehensive victory over New York. Westmeath have only played 2 games, but have certainly been pushed to their pin of their collar. A 1-13 to 13 point win over Leisha, a game they actually played the majority of which with 14 men as well. And they then dug out a tough and hard-fought win away to Carlow, 121 to 2-13. So big results right there from a Westmeath perspective. Focusing in on Offaly so far, I mean, Noel McNamee is obviously going to be their biggest threat, and I think having a player of his quality in Croke Park, I mean, that's going to be of huge interest. I mean, he scored 116 so far in the Tailteann Cup, one of the top scorers in the competition. An experienced veteran of the game, as we very well know, alongside Rory McNamee. And he's bags of quality, bags of talent. And I'm very excited to see him play because obviously I haven't seen too much of Offaly play this year. And that is what kind of makes these Tailteann Cup predictions maybe a little bit more difficult because you're sort of looking at scores and basing it off of that. And obviously we've seen a couple of games in the Tailteann Cup this year on GAA Go. And we've also seen a couple of highlights on the Sunday game. So we've seen a fair few, but one player that has impressed me quite a lot for Offaly this year is Anton Sullivan. He came off the bench, remember, in the latter stages of the league and done quite well. Veteran player. He's been around the panel for the last couple of seasons and he's done a very, very good job, to be fair. He kicked 2 points in that win versus Wexford, kicked 2 points versus Wicklow as well. And he was heavily influential in their result over New York. He got himself a goal to go with it. So he's been very crucial, linking up the play from what I've seen, obviously, from watching that New York game. A part of everything, very direct as well, very quick on the ball. And to be fair to Offaly, they do play good football. They play attractive football. And obviously you would when you're playing in New York, to be fair. I mean, you'd be quite worried if they went defensive for that game. And they've plenty of good players like Jack Bryant, who was a big part of Offaly's under-20 All-Ireland Championship win. Like, he started to solidify himself in the team now at corner forward. He kicked 2 points against New York. He also kicked 2 points against Wicklow as well. So, this is the sort of main positive about the Tailteann Cup when you think about it. Like a player like Jack Bryant, for example, the likes of your Cormac Egan's, your Mark Tynans, Mark Abbott's, young lads sort of coming through the side for Offaly and even for Sligo as well. If they just got dumped out of the championship or were in the qualifiers and got a 10 to 15 point hammering, they wouldn't get game time. They wouldn't have a chance to develop. They just would have been sent back to their clubs and they would have had no meaningful inter-county football. And haven't been able to see players like Jack Bryant, for example, get more game time, I think is a big positive. And it's been something similar that we've seen with Sligo as well, because they've also been able to introduce a lot of good players as well, or a lot of younger players. Jordan Hayes has looked impressive around the middle as well. And look, I think Westmeath would be the slight favourites going into this one. But Westmeath have been a strange side. Like, they weren't, like, they seem to dig themselves into holes and sort of put themselves in awkward situations. Like in the Laois game, Kevin Maguire gets sent off in the 19th minute early on in the first half. They end up narrowly coming through that game, but going up against a Laois side that was down on confidence, that had been hammered just a couple of weeks previous to Wicklow. You would have fancied Westmeath maybe to put the nail in the coffin. So Westmeath are a strange team when they're playing the sort of the good teams or teams that you would perceive as better than Westmeath, i.e. Kildare, for example. They'll play quite well and they'll kick 2-15. And even last year at times when they played Meath and Mayo, they looked very good. They were very well organised and were actually quite unlucky not to come out, with at least a draw in either one of those games, if not unlucky to not have won either one of them two. So it's a strange one. Westmeath against Carlow, they came up against a Carlow side that was obviously buoyed up by that win over Tipperary. But look, to be fair to them, with the fact that they're a side that is quite used to playing in Croke Park, to be fair, more so than this Offaly side, like the Leinster semi-finals, obviously in the last 2 seasons have been in Croke Park against Kildare. They've had a Division 4 final, I remember, or Division 3 final a couple of seasons ago in Croke Park as well. So they've played a couple more games in Croke Park, maybe more so than Offaly, and that could stand to them. John Heslin is obviously going to be the man to watch out for there. He's kicked 114 so far this year. Luke Loughlin, the re-emergence of him has been key. 8 points in his last 2, all of which from play, so he could make a big difference as well. Still have Ray Kennellan to come back into the side as well. I believe he's out with an injury at the minute. Was on the panel the last day against Carlow, but didn't feature. Sam McCartan has looked good as well. 1-4 in his last 2. So Westmeath have a lot of quality across the pitch, but it is a hard one to call. Sir Klopp says here, Offaly a good team, but haven't been properly tested yet. Their backs are suspect. Westmeath's strength is their attack. Their forwards are pacey. Can see this game being an exciting open game. Westmeath to win by 2 or 3. Yeah, it's a hard one to know. I mean, you feel like if Westmeath are at the races and they play to their potential, they should win the game. But as I said, they've had a lot of inconsistency in there. And Offaly, although, as you say there, they do have a couple of defensive issues, make no mistake about that. They have been playing in much. They played some good teams this year. You know, they've played the likes of your Roscommons, your Galways. You know, they've had a tough battle against Cork. They've had a lot of competitive games this year, more so than Westmeath, given the fact that Westmeath obviously have only played 2 games in this competition. Or maybe they've more or less played the same, but I just think Offaly have played a bit higher quality opposition. So look, I think this is going to be a very, very close game, very exciting game. I think this might be the better of the 2 games in the semi-finals, to be honest. But I'm going to back Westmeath after extra time. I think my prediction at the start of the Tailteann Cup was that a Westmeath Cavan final. So I think we're gonna stick to that prediction, and I think Westmeath should narrowly have enough. But it is going to be a fascinating battle between the 2 veteran sharpshooters in John Heslin of Westmeath and Noel McNamee of Offaly. And you know, plenty of young lads coming through Offaly at the minute. Some young players coming into the mix with Westmeath as well. And you know, I think it's going to be a very, very open and exciting game. Make no mistake about that. Cavan and Sligo is the next game to discuss. Cavan are overwhelming favourites in many respects to win this Tailteann Cup, and you can certainly understand so. I mean, every test that they've had this year, or they haven't really been tested at all. You know, any sort of tests you might think they might have, they've overcame with ease. I mean, Fermanagh away was built up in most people's eyes, including myself, as a game that they might struggle in going to a ground they lost at last year. Fermanagh, local derby, Brewster Park, you know, it might be a bit difficult for them. Fermanagh were going in with a bit of form as well, but absolutely put them to the pin of their collar. 2-16 to a 13-point win, a 9-point victory. And actually just looking through Cavan's results in total, I mean, they beat down comprehensively 24 points to 112. They then followed that one up with that result over Fermanagh as well. So, like, on paper, Fermanagh and Down, I know Down have got a lot of issues behind the scenes at the minute, but on paper, you're probably looking at 2 of the stronger sides, and Fermanagh away was probably Cavan's toughest draw that they could have got in the next round of the Tailteann Cup. So the fact that they've come through them so convincingly, I think it just leans really towards a pretty comfortable Cavan victory, to be perfectly honest. They've clearly carried on that same form that we've seen from them in the championship. You know, they obviously came through Antrim with pretty much ease. They comprehensively dug out, or sorry, not comprehensively, but they put in a very good shift against Donegal as well, kicked 16 points that day. And I think they can look at themselves a little bit unlucky as well. And what you know, fascinates me about Cavan as well is they aren't, especially in this Tailteann Cup, like maybe in the championship against Donegal, they were probably reliant quite a lot on the influence of Paddy Lynch. But to be honest with you, you know, and this might be a bit of a left field statement, but I really feel that this Cavan team is actually better than the 2020 team, to be perfectly honest. You know, maybe they didn't get the look in terms of breaking balls, or obviously in the 2020 final, Sean Patton spills that ball and Cavan get a goal out of it right at the end. Like, sometimes you just need a little bit of luck to win those games. Against Down, for example, I remember there was a dodgy goal disallowed. And look, these things happen. Sometimes luck goes in your favour, sometimes it goes against you. As we've seen in the semi-final, in the Ulster semi-finals, 2 long balls floated in that were supposed to be points from the forwards. They ended up dropping short, and Donegal ended up working goals out of them. So I just think this Cavan side is really well balanced. Like, Paddy Lynch has kicked 7 points in the Tailteann Cup. A lot of people would look at him as Cavan's number 1 forward this year, and he probably still hasn't even kicked into first gear or kicked into, you know, the absolute best version of himself in the Tailteann Cup. Grove McKiernan has kicked 11 points. Thomas Galligan with 1-4. You know, Faulkner's got forward, and and got on the score sheet with a goal as well. They're just getting scores from everywhere. James Smith, Jared Smith getting in there as well. Raymond Galligan, must be, I think he is the top scoring goalkeeper in the country at the minute. He's kicked 8 points so far, a very good option from 45. So Cavan just have a whole host of options, and they're a side that's used to playing in Crow Park nearly at this stage, the Division 4 final, and also 2020 when they played the Dubs in that All-Ireland semi-final as well. So, but look, to be fair to Sligo, I mean, I think you have to give them credit for digging out two difficult games in the last two. They have to overcome, just looking through their results so far. I mean, they have to dig through a testing game against London. That obviously goes to extra time. And then not only that as well, they had a fairly tough game against Leitrim as well. I mean, that one went to penalties. So Sligo have had a tough route to this competition, but maybe in the past Sligo would have been a team that might have wilted or given in maybe in those types of games. So I definitely think they're a side that's improving. Alan Riley has emerged during this Tailteann Cup kicking 112. Patrick O'Connor with 10 points, Carabine with 5 points as well. So, Sligo, they're, I think at the end of the day, like they're always going to be, kind of a wild card for this competition and dark horses. And they've got a very good attack, to be fair to them, a manager that knows how to organize the team. I'd look at them as a side that should kick on and be up there for promotion next year. I think when you look at the level of quality that's coming through the under-20s as well, Niall Murphy, for example, who's been, excellent for Sligo in the last couple of seasons. He hasn't even kicked into gear really yet in the Tailteann Cup. So, you'd have to commend Sligo for the work that they have done. But yeah, Sir Klopp says Sligo really strange this year, hammering the weak teams in Division 4, then some poor results towards the end, and struggled against New York and London. Drew at Leitrim, only won on pens. Yeah, like they could have been beaten by London. I mean, with a bit of bad luck, they could have been out in that first round. And obviously, I think most people have seen the Leitrim goal in extra time that was given as a square ball. You can clearly see he's a couple of yards in front of the square. So, he shouldn't have, that goal should have stood, and maybe Leitrim could have went on to win the game. Joseph says the extra time games against London and Leitrim will bring the Sligo team on. Yeah, like I think it definitely will. It definitely will serve to them in the next couple of seasons. But I think all in all, this probably isn't the draw they would have wanted. I think they would have rathered, one of the other teams in the semi-finals. Let's be honest. Sir Klopp says Cavan by 10. JMac podcast says Cavan all day long. End conversation, a little less conversation, a little more action, please. Come on. There we go. There's a bit of singing for you there. I suppose Cavan haven't had much to sing about this year, really. So yeah, but look, I would fancy them to come through this one. But given the fact that it's a weird one with Cavan, I just feel like because like all my predictions with them have really been wrong when I've backed. Well, to be fair, they've come through a lot. They've come through a lot of adversity this year. So if they're not beating Sligo, I think there'll be a big worry. So yeah, I'm going to say Cavan I'm going to go 8 points. 8 points for a victory there. So the Cavan fans will, I'm sure, be out in full force in Dublin City on Sunday evening. But yeah, let me know your predictions in the comments down below for the weekend's Tailteann Cup action. Certainly 2 games on RTE as well, so it'll be great to actually be able to see these games live and break them down, all the rest, because I think that's a big issue with a lot of these Division 3 and 4 teams. You don't really get to see too many of them play. So I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll run through some all-stars so far from the 2022 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. Now, this is my pick, so obviously do bear in mind this isn't official, and I'm obviously just a regular fan, similar to a lot of you lads. So don't take some of these picks too serious or get too offended in the comments down below. But do feel free to disagree and let me know your picks for All Stars so far. And obviously, what I would say as well is it's kind of hard to, I'm obviously doing this for a bit of crack and a bit of a laugh, but it's hard to have put in, hard to have fitted in everyone, and it's sort of because of the way the championship's structured, it's a little lopsided in some respects, and the fact that Kerry have come through to low-level Division 2 sides. We don't really know the level of what players they're at, for example. So it's kind of hard to know it's hard to put some of those players in for All Stars, although, and same with Dublin as well. Although I do think at the end of the championship, I do think we'll be looking at plenty of All Stars on both the ranks of Derry or of Dublin and Kerry. So in terms of the goalkeeper, I mean, plenty of options. Kind of a hard one to pick. I mean, as I was saying there, I don't think Evan Comerford has really been tested too much for Dublin, and I don't think Shane Murphy's really been tested for Kerry either. But I think, looking at the games in the last couple of weeks, I think one goalkeeper who has stood up and who has given a big performance from his county, in my opinion, has been Ethan Rafferty of Armagh. I mean, he kicked 2 points from play in that win over Tyrone. Struggled with his kickouts against Donegal in the first half. I remember he was going down the middle quite a lot, but at the same time, I don't think a lot of them were down to him, to be perfectly honest. But excellent on his kickouts from there on in when he was kicking out towards the wing. And I think he has to be in there at the moment as the goalkeeper on the team. Now, I mean, who else would you really pick out there? I mean, Robbie Henley's only started 2 games. I don't think he's been that impressive, to be honest. In terms of, he's missed a couple of 45s, I remember as well. So wouldn't quite have him in at this stage, but you would probably, if Mayo were to progress on further, you might end up having him in there at some stage. So look, it's all subjective at the end of the day. If Armagh get beat by Galway, I don't think the Armagh goalkeeper will be winning any All-Stars, make no mistake about that. But moving into the right cornerback position, I've gone for Chrissy McCaig. I mean, I think I've seen a statistic. I mean, this guy has marked Darren McCurry, Patrick McBrearty, and Conor McManus so far, and I think only 2 points from play, I think, in total out of them all, and that's quite an extraordinary statistic, really, from him. And when you look at Derry's defence in general, I mean, it's been very good, but I suppose when you do set up that defensively, I mean, it kind of needs to be good. And I think McCaig has done very, very well for Derry in at that right corner back position. Sir Klopp says Byrne for Leitrim in terms of All-Star picks. I presume you mean there. I mean, that is definitely a shout right there. Moving into the full back role, we do have Mr. Brendan Rodgers. Don't have an image here, unfortunately. I thought I did. But yeah, Brendan Rodgers of Derry so far, in my opinion, has been, I mean, he's been excellent so far for Derry. I mean, he kicked 3 points, obviously, against Donegal when, Michael Murphy was obviously tiring towards the end of the game. And you've seen Brendan Rodgers just racing up the field. I mean, the thing that's most exciting about this Derry side, in my opinion, is, yes, they are very defensive, and you can see the Jim McGuinness comparisons, and you can call them Jim McGuinness 2.0 and Rory Gallagher, obviously from the same school of thought and all the rest. But there is an evolution about this Derry side that's a little bit different. And when you see those fullbacks and cornerbacks racing forward with the ball, it's just a joy to behold. And Rodgers was just, he didn't tire whatsoever. He seemed to get even more fitter as the game went on. You think in extra time, those 2 decisive points that Derry won by, he scores one and he sets the other one up for Conor Glass. So I think Rodgers has been very, very good for Derry. And I think defensively, Derry have been excellent under Rory Gallagher, and Rodgers has been a key part of that. Moving into the left corner back, and it is Tom O'Sullivan. He's kicked a couple of points so far for Kerry. Again, another sort of tricky one in some respects, given the fact that Kerry have faced 2 low-level Division 2 sides as opposed to Derry, who've only had to play Division 1 teams. So, it is kind of the nature of how the draw has gone. And I'm sure when the championship is all said and done, there will certainly be more Kerry players who will get in the conversation. But Tom O'Sullivan's been very good so far for Kerry. And when you look at how well organised Kerry defence has been so far this year throughout the league, the Paddy Tally influences we've very much seen, and O'Sullivan's turnovers as well has been key. Cork and Limerick really didn't have too much of a sniff of goals or anything like that, and I think O'Sullivan has a big part to have played in that so far. But I think the big asset test will obviously be against Mayo, especially if you had a Ryan O'Donoghue back in, and it'd be interesting to see who would potentially pick him up. But obviously that's one we will have to wait for. Moving into the half-back line, you've got John Small. He's been very good for Dublin so far. And I think, he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit for Dublin this year. Not a lot of people may be speaking about him quite a bit. And I think there's obviously a big reason for that. I mean, Dublin have demolished all three teams that they've played in the Leinster Championship. It's obviously all been about the forwards, and Dublin have had their fair share of defensive issues, as we have seen in the league this year. But in terms of the championship, he's been key. I mean, he got himself a goal against Kildare. He's kicked a couple of scores as well. And he's been excellent for Dublin in around the half-back line. I think Dublin were much improved defensively against Kildare. You've definitely seen a few more sort of aggressive tackles popping in from the likes of John Small and some of the other Dublin defenders, which we just haven't seen throughout the league. So I think Small gets in there. Todd Morley is the man beside him. Again, some big turnovers from Mr. Morley of that Kerry side in at the centre half back. So I think he's been very good from a Kerry perspective so far. And again, obviously watching him going up against the Mayo side, which is going to be an intriguing spectacle because, if Kerry set up how they will set up and Mayo set up as this sort of attacking high-octane team, you could see Todd Morley playing a critical role in those turnovers in the half-back line, and then Kerry breaking on the counter-attack. So he could certainly be an addition in there. Sir Klopp says Keegan as the sole representative for Mayo. Yeah, I mean, Keegan was very, very close. I haven't put him in personally, but I do think he's been exceptional for Mayo so far, and he's probably been Mayo's best player so far this year. And I think, if Mayo can find a way past Kerry, you would fully expect Keegan to get in there because he has been. And could you have Keegan going up against Clifford? I mean, I'm very, very excited for that Mayo Kerry game, by the way, and I'm very, very much looking forward to breaking that one down next weekend. But moving into number 7, so the other player at wingback, it is Jarly O'Byrnes of Armagh. His performance against Donegal was very, very good. It was like, I can understand why Rian O'Neill obviously wins man of the match, and rightly so. He was excellent. He obviously kicks 1-7 and, I mean, dominated the game, caught, played that high ball into Rory Grugan to start things off with. So you can understand why he wins man of the match. But Jarly O'Byrnes has been very, very good and very much gone under the radar for Armagh. I mean, he kicked 3 points against Donegal, kicked a point the day previous against Tyrone as well. He's been very, very good in around that wing-back position. So I don't think you can overlook Mr. Jarly O'Byrnes. But moving into the midfield, then we have Conor Glass. No surprises really there. Kicks a decisive point right at the end of the victory versus Donegal. And I suppose when Derry were, doing their usual passing from side to side, playing it around at the back, I mean, Glass was, I suppose, key in picking out passes, and he's a phenomenal athlete. I mean, the size of him at times when he's jumping up to catch high balls, I mean, he nearly looks like he's about to fly away or something like that, like a seagull or something. He's an extraordinary athlete, and he's been very, very good for Derry. The other midfielder is Paul Conroy. So far this year, Mr. Conroy with 5 points in total. Some exceptional points, very good against Mayo. Like, Matthew Rowan was very quiet that day, and I thought Conroy certainly won that battle. And obviously against Roscommon as well, he had a very, very good game, to be fair to him. Very critical in and around the middle from Mr. Paul Conroy. And, the fact that he's such a high scoring midfielder as well. I remember even in that game against Roscommon in the league and the Croke Park, he was unbelievable. He gave a performance for the ages in the first half. So, yeah, Paul Conroy's been exceptional for Galway. And playing those support balls into Shane Walsh, I think, has been key as well. Moving on to the next position then. And don't think it's really too much surprises. I think Kieran Kilkenny has been one of Dublin's better players this year. I think he's been very, very good. He's kicked a total so far this year of 1-6, which has been key. And I think when you have him in the half forward line, one thing about Kilkenny in the league, and one of the reasons why I think Dublin were struggling quite a lot in the league, was because Kilkenny was playing in a full forward. He's not an out and out full forward, in my opinion. He's far more effective when you're in around the half forward line. And I think having Conor Callanan come back into the side and then pushing Kilkenny back to a half forward line, I think it's been key, because his sort of key attribute really is linking the play together. It's been brilliant. He's a fantastic ball carrier. Like, he's just such a hard player to dispossess as well. You want to be putting in some hit to try to get the ball off him, because very, very tough indeed. And the bonus to that is he's a brilliant kicker of points as well. And arguably, when you think back to last year, like, he had a lot of Dublin lads who underperformed, but he hasn't. Like, he's kind of kept his consistent level. So you could say, in this sort of mini rut of, 18 months, or, if Dublin don't win the All-Ireland this year, it'd be 2 years. Wow, 2 years without an All-Ireland, crazy. But he's been probably the best player during that mini spell, in my opinion. Moving on next, then, who do we have next in the half forward line? I'm not too sure who I had next. I don't know, Jeff. I'm having a Chris Kamara moment here. Who did I have next? I think it was Keelan Sexton. We'll throw him in there for now until we figure it out. Keelan Sexton of Clare. If you score 2-6 against Roscommon and Croke Park, it certainly gets him in the conversation. He wasn't available for the opening game against Limerick, and he came off the bench against Meath. But even when he came off the bench against Meath, he made a big impact in that game. He kicked a vital point towards the end. Did miss a penalty, but he made up for it a week later. So I think that's absolutely crucial from Mr. Keelan Sexton. And, I just wanted to get a Clare player in there, because why not? Clare have been very good this year. A big win over the Rossies, a famous win in many ways. He kicks that late penalty. He kicks a point from in around the 45-meter line. And that was just brilliant. Like, to do that under that level of pressure was just key. And I think he's had a very, very good year indeed for Clare. Moving on after that, I've remembered who it was now. It was Sean O'Shea. Apologies there. But yeah, Sean O'Shea again. In similar fashion to what we were saying about Kilkenny, he probably hasn't come up against the highest level of opposition, but he's kicked 16 points so far, a lot of which have been frees. Very good against Cork, kicked 10 points in that game. And, I think if Kerry are going to go on and win the All-Ireland, which most people expect, to be honest, I think this guy is going to have a huge, huge part to play in that. He was out for the majority of the league. He's come back into the team since, and I think he's played a big role for this Kerry side. Moving into the full forward line then, before we wrap things up. Moving into the right forward line then, we have a player that I don't think is really too much surprise given his performance at the weekend, and it is Rian O'Neill. He kicked 1-7 against Donegal. It was just probably one of the best individual performances I've seen this year, in my opinion. Everything he done was right. I don't even know if he done anything wrong, to be honest. First of all, he wins the throw in. He hits the long, the direct diagonal ball straight up to Rory Grug and plays a part in that goal. Gets himself a goal, obviously, from the penalty as well. Some really, really well taken points, kicking on his left, his right. You know, I remember times when he was getting defensive blocks in there. He was just absolutely everywhere. He was nearly playing every position. You know, you were nearly seeing double looking at the TV because you were thinking there was 4 or 5 of them out there. Like, I mean, he's some player altogether. He really, really is. And he was probably maybe a little bit quiet before that. I mean, he kicked 4 points against Tyrone, didn't score against Donegal on the opening day out. But I mean, by God, did he come into life in that game. Number 14 in a full forward, big Conor Callanan. Don't think there can be any surprises here. 213 this year. You see the difference that he makes to this Dublin side since coming back into the team. You know, kicked 1-5 against Wexford, 1-6 against Kildare, 4 against Meath. Like, he's been very, very good. And you know, last year I thought he was a little bit quiet, sort of in the back end of the championship. He didn't have his best game against Mayo, I felt, and he was sort of, his form just wasn't quite what we would normally see with Conor Callanan when you think back to 2019 or 2020. And, you know, whether there was an injury sort of there and that's why he was out in the league or what was going on, I don't really know. But this year he's made a big, big impact coming back into the side. And, you know, he's an option from, he's an option for the kick pass as well, which Dublin struggled with in the league. So he's been very good. And last but not least, then, I don't think there can be any surprises here. Shane Walsh, 117 this year for Galway in 3 championship games. His goal against Roscommon, one of the goals of the championship, in my opinion. I mean, it's the 2 little dummies before rifling in the goalkeeper's bottom right corner. Mightn't be the goal of the championship. I mean, maybe Jordan Flynn's against Roscommon against Kildare might be up there, but I think he's been very good. In terms of some other players maybe who haven't got a mention, I mean, Sir Klopp was saying Lee Keegan there. I think you could have put him in there. Ben McCormick's been very good for Kildare. Rory Grugan's been excellent for Armagh. Stephen Campbell's been very good as well. I mean, obviously this team will change because usually when the All-Stars come out, you know, it's usually dominated by the 2 teams in the All-Ireland final, and then you might get a few semi-final players. So obviously not all of these players will win All-Stars. We know that for a matter of fact. But you know, could Shane McGuigan maybe get in the mix? He's a potential option. Cathal O'Connor's been good for Clare, I felt. Owen Cleary as well. So plenty of options, most definitely. You look like Chris Kamara. Definitely can see the resemblance. All right. I mean, I've got a similar beard. I just need a microphone to go with it, and then maybe like a little green screen. Green screen. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I've been talking too much when I'm not constructing my sentences. Clifford will ragdoll Mayo. It won't be enough for Mayo to rally late. Most of Mayo's scores come from half-back line. The Mayo half-back line will be too focused on Kerry forwards. Kerry have to win. Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think, you know, I don't want to speak too much about the game because I'm sure we may even speak about it at some point, John, maybe next week or something. But I do think, like, Mayo can't approach the Kerry game in the same way that they've approached all the other games. Like, I just don't think you can be pushing Oisin Mullen, Owen McLaughlin, Lee Keegan so high up the pitch. You can't be pushing your halfback so high up the pitch because they'll just get murdered on the counter attack, and it'll be very, very, like, it could be quite brutal, to be honest, you know. But I'm hanging my hat that James Horn isn't going to be as naive. Surely not. But we'll see. JMac podcast again. Oh, geez, you're flying with the comments here. Andy Moore made good pointing off the ball. Kerry will hate getting Mayo. Suits Mayo down to the ground. Yeah, more of what we discussed there. Keegan will probably go on Sean O'Shea. Clifford could be marked by Mullen, who will be guaranteed another All-Star if Mayo beat Kerry. Yeah, I suppose Oisin Mullen isn't a million miles away. I mean, you would say, isn't he? Like, in terms of All-Star. I mean, it was a big goal, obviously, against Kildare. But I don't think he played the Galway game, if I remember. But yeah, a big performance against Kerry. You would expect him to be in the conversation. Jack says, come on, writing off Kerry will probably suit them. People shouldn't mention they're not tested. Kerry have what dubs versus them years ago. The bench on the depth, Kerry will edge it. Yeah, I mean, well, you'd expect them to beat Mayo. I mean, they're certainly going to be going in as favourites. And as a Dublin fan, the worrying point there is, Dublin are realistically going to cruise past Cork, and it's probably going to be over going into the final 10 to 15 minutes. Whereas Kerry, I mean, they might put Mayo away early as well. But I do suspect it will be a lot closer than people think. And then Kerry are going into that Dublin game with a test, which is, as we very well know, what Kerry have lacked in sort of in the last couple of years. So before an All-Ireland semi-final. So look, it's going to be intriguing. It's going to be interesting, and I'm sure we'll be around to preview it tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week. Tomorrow, Jesus, I'm getting ahead of myself there. But yeah, we're going to end the stream here anyways. Cheers anyone who tuned in. Just a reminder, the podcast is brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star, the best children's GAA book out there in the market at the minute. You can find it on Amazon and Easons. So make sure to check that one out as well. And there will be a hurling preview out tomorrow with Paul Flaherty of What's the Score. We'll be looking at Galway versus Cork and Clare versus Wexford. So certainly two big games to discuss there. Plenty of reactions out the weekend as well. And yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in. If you could hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, if you're new to the channel. Support has been brilliant so far. So yeah, cheers anyone who tuned in. I'll talk to you all later.